Hello everybody and welcome to NetSuite Tutorials. And this is going to be a training course on SuiteAnalytics Workbooks. And in these sessions, in this course, you will learn everything that you need to know about workbooks to begin with. Okay, so this is going to be an exciting course. It's going to be about an hour and a half. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you from the beginning to the end on everything that you should know about workbooks when you start working with it, how to create it. We're gonna go through and from scratch build it in one of the demos that we're gonna do, and we're gonna create from scratch a data set workbook. We're gonna share it. We're gonna create really cool graphs and charts. We're gonna talk about some tips and tricks and basic understanding of what workbook does and how to differentiate between other tools inside of NetSuite and SuiteAnalytics, such as reports and searches and KPIs. And you can go ahead and skip to certain topics that you like. I will post exact time of that in the comments, but I do recommend you walking through from the beginning to end if you have time for about 90 minutes. And this is going to be exciting, guys, and welcome to this course. Okay, so let's begin. So in the course introduction, I'll tell you a little bit who I am. If for those of you who never seen my videos before, we'll talk about the structure of this course and who is this for, and what you will exactly learn, what you're gonna get out of this course once you complete it. And also we'll talk a little bit about what is not gonna get covered in this course, as well, as this is only the introduction course. Okay, so I've been using NetSuite for over 7 years, and workbooks I've actually been using for 6 years. So I'm located in Charlotte, North Carolina, and my name is Oleg Zygalenko, and I graduated here from North Carolina with a degree in computer engineering about 10 years ago. And just a little bit something about me. I like to collect antiques and vintage. Cameras is my favorite. I also collect some music memorabilia, and so yeah. Okay, so let's talk about how is this course laid out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about the concept first. We're gonna go over so that you get a really good foundation of understanding before we jump into the examples. I know a lot of people like to just get to the examples and see it, but my approach is to actually give you the concept, to actually the meats of why things work certain way and how they work and how to actually use this tool later when we get to the example. So that's kind of just my structure. So I want to make sure that you guys understand of why and how before of actually what it is doing. Although of course we're gonna get into the walkthrough a little bit, and then we'll get into example, and then we'll review everything, and we'll have a lot of fun. So who is this course for? So this is basically for anybody who uses NetSuite, which you will come across workbooks eventually at some point anyway. So if you are an administrator, you will definitely be needing to use this. A lot of people will be asking you to build reports and searches, and you can use this tool to kind of give them what they want. A lot of people will not know about workbooks at all. They'll just tell you, hey, I need this report, I need this search. And instead of just building this in an old-fashioned, boring way, you can use this really cool new tool graphically and visually, and pretty simple, easy to use. If you like data, analyze the data. If you're in any way can be working or are working already in the data, and try to analyze, predict certain things, right? And you can definitely take advantage of this great tool where you can visually see the trends much better than you can see that in searches or reports. This is kind of, I wouldn't call this an AI really tool. It doesn't really use AI. This is just a straight data inputs, but they have a lot of pre-built data, so you can visually see it and kind of understand much better than just a number. like a KPI or a report in any way. So also this is great for managers. There's a lot of different tools that the Workbook Analytics offer for managers to be able to control and see if you have subordinates you can build. You will see a great example that we use in this case study for cases. If you manage in times or anything, that this tool can give you great visibility to a lot of data inside of NetSuite, and you can definitely utilize that to your advantages and start using that. What you will learn in this course, so you will basically learn about everything about workbooks. So this is a basic course. It's not gonna go deep into a lot of different topics, which we'll cover in a minute, but so you will learn about workbooks and how the data sets, how we extract the data, and what are the advantages of this workbook versus already tools that you're using if you are using searches, or if you're using KPIs, or if you're using the financial reports. What is the advantage of this workbook, and when do you need to use this? We're gonna talk about how we're gonna build a workbook from scratch, creating a data set first, and then creating the workbooks, how we can build beautiful graphs and charts, and how can we display better data in a better way to be able to understand what this data represents in the back end. We will also talk about how to share this with others in your company, where you can send it over to them and give them the permissions to do certain things and work with them. Also how to display your results and graphs and charts onto the dashboard on your homepage, so that way you can utilize it data and track anything that you want. We will talk also about best practices, things to avoid, things that you should do and how you should do it, and what is the best way of doing them. We will cover those topics as well. What is not covered? So this is a basic structure. So this is basic understanding this course to give you just a kind of get going on the workbook, so you can start creating it and dig deeper into it just a little bit, enough for you to be dangerous in it. Now, I am not gonna cover formulas in this particular series or queries. So these are the more advanced topics where you can get your data more centralized or presented in a certain way. We're not gonna talk about formatting the data, where you can convert dates into different types and text and numbers. We will also not talk about when we talk about the criteria and building really complex and or statements, right? Combining multiple criteria to create. We're just going to use a simple basic extractions from your NetSuite raw data. We will also not go into more level joins. So NetSuite offers many different levels in the workbook as far as digging deeper, and we will talk about this, what this means to you and what it means to the data. But basically we will not go over the two level of joins. So we will not go from one to another and then leave that data and go to another one. So we will not be creating this multi-level joins, just the two record types. We will also not talk about the workbooks that you can combine, so you can use multiple different workbooks, bring together from different sources. And we will also not talk about scripting at all in this series, which you can actually utilize SuiteScript to build much more data structures into it, where you can bring different types of workbooks together and kind of force certain fields and do different logic inside of scripting that out of the box workbook does not allow you. So this is a basic structure of this course, and I hope you guys are excited as I am, and let's get started. So before we get into NetSuite and start playing around with this actual tool, let's talk about what this actually is and what it does. So Workbooks is inside of NetSuite, and it's part of the SuiteAnalytics kind of like the ecosystem, right? So we have saved searches, we have also reports, we have KPIs, and now we have this workbook. Now, as of time of recording this, the new tool that also came out a couple years ago, about 2 years ago, is the Warehouse, which is another tool, but it's outside of NetSuite. You have to kind of build a connector to be able to extract the data and then analyze it also on Oracle, but it's externally, so it's not necessarily inside of NetSuite, so it's a connector outside. But Workbooks is the closest to what we have that lives inside of NetSuite natively, and everybody without any extra pay or anything. When you get NetSuite out of the box solution, you get the workbook analytics inside of it. So in comparison to searches, right? So when you build a searches, everybody probably used the searches before. It's a tool, searches, that you build the criteria, you also build your results and kind of work with that, right? And so it's a very old tool. It's still, of course, used and will be used probably for very, very, very long time. And it's different from workbooks in the fact that it's a little bit more old-fashioned. So getting from one way to another, it's kind of a more you gotta have clicks more. When the workbooks, it's all in one view, which you'll get to see it later, which is really cool as well. Now, in comparison to reports, for instance, we're talking about financial report, right? Now, that data is analyzed really good for financial reports or for statements where you give different, let's say, a customer, right? How much money does this customer owe, right? Now, there would be a report that will give really good understanding of kind of a snapshot in data, or you can analyze financial reports for last quarter or in comparison to last year and so forth, right? So that's kind of a build for that. Report is more on the financial side, which is specifically built and designed for that really good tool. Now, workbooks, in comparison to reports, is not as good at this point. It is good, but not just, you can't kind of quite get to all the fields. The way that they structure this workbook is on a more on SQL side of that. The way that tables are built is a little bit different than reports were built originally inside of NetSuite. So financially wise, I would say reports are still definitely will be getting used way more than workbooks. Maybe later on it will go the other way. Now, KPIs is another tool which kind of is more, if you guys have been working with it, you understand that it's kind of a comparison to different values and kind of comparing those two values and see how you are compared to another value. So you can kind of build a KPI from last year to compare to this year, right? And then you kind of see, hey, are you getting close or not? You can compare, how much money are you spending this year versus last year or a quarter. Or so basically it's comparing two different values. It's a measurement and see how you are. Are you over? Are you under? Are you on target, on budget, and so forth. Now, the workbook is different when it comes to that. Workbooks brings a lot of different data and you can organize it better. You can see multiple different data structures and data types inside of the versus each of this individual one does its own specific report much better than even a workbook. So once you get through this and understand the how NetSuite separates those four, you will see when to use it and when to use the one over the other. Okay, so now let's get to understand why this one, why would you use workbook versus that? Well, it's really simple, easy to use, easy drag and drop fields versus like saved searches and reports. There's a lot of clicking, a lot of typing, a lot of this. This is very visually really cool way to kind of understand better and see it better. If you sometimes you can't see the field, you gotta type for it inside of the searches. One of the things I don't like about searches is if you know the field, you gotta scroll down, try to find it, try to see it where it is. You can't locate it. Now this workbook is much better, easier way to see all the fields that it can offer. Okay, so now visual is really cool. Now, one thing that we'll go into more detail, it's a multi-level joins, which we'll spend a separate time talking about what this really is. This is a real-time data network. So if you can organize and you can build a lot of different things inside of your Excel sheet, right? You can export the data, build a search, export into CSV, build an Excel, and then you can use pivot tables and charts inside of them. But every time you need to go back and grab another report, right? And you need to go back into NetSuite and rerun it every day or whatever the time frame that you're looking for. Now, this is different. Workbook is live data because you're doing these tables and charts live inside of NetSuite right away. Another cool thing that it offers, there is a lot of pre-built templates that NetSuite offers for many different types of records, which will go into a little bit deeper on that as well. And also Workbook offers a custom formula fields, which is another little deeper the customization that, of course, searches and reports also offer more on the formulas as well, where you can build and customize a little bit more. But this is a little bit easier to use than searches. For instance, formulas, you can validate better, you can see it better, you can just double click and work on it, which of course in this course we will not get to that because this is just a basic introductory course and we will not talk about formulas. So live NetSuite data. So that's one thing that I want to again bring it up. Again, this is live inside of NetSuite. So every time when you use this, it brings the data refreshed. So as your orders coming in, you don't need to re-enter data or the fields or anything. You just rerun it. You just hit refresh and it brings live data into it. When you have invoices and it just got paid, it's automatically gonna get updated and you don't need to go back and do that. It's automatically refreshes and it's on your dashboard and you can easily see it. Now, these are the cool visualization that workbooks have to offer. Now, searches, reports, they don't do that, right? KPI is just a kind of just a number in green or yellow or blue, whatever you want to set the colors to. But this one, you can see all these different colors. You can visualize better. There are different types of charts that you can use. Now, it doesn't have, at this point that I'm recording this, we do not have, NetSuite doesn't have like a pie chart or anything like that yet, but I'm sure they're working on it. At least I told them to do so because I like my pie charts on many different data that I like to see, but they don't offer that at this point. But there's still a lot of graphs you can do and charts and area charts and different types of visually pleasant colors and things like that, and you can deselect and play with the almost like live data, which is pretty cool. So very nice, much definitely better than other tools that NetSuite has. So this is definitely a step up in that right direction. Now again, I want to bring up again the templates and sharing. I found this to be very, very useful. In my experience working with a lot of searches, with a lot of reports, when you build and somebody asks you, you have so many different searches. When you go into, when you're administrator and you see everybody's searches, you really have thousands of different people recreating, trying different things, resaving them, very similar names, getting really confusing. Now, workbooks offer that really cool way of sorting and organizing your own workbooks that you build, so then it doesn't muddy the waters of others. So it's kind of like your own world. It's kind of like your own separate data that you're building, so you're not muddy the waters for others. So that's another really cool thing. NetSuite offers a lot of different templates pre-built for different types and records, and on the top of that, when they create these templates, they bring a lot of different, so let's say you're working on, you want to do a report on sales orders. Now, when you click on that as your entry point into the sales order, NetSuite gives you that template, which already brings a lot of the common data, a lot of common fields that you want to pull, like a total, an item, a name, a customer, dates. And so you don't really have to spend time building that report from scratch. All of those already created. Now, you can also, as an administrator, create templates for yourself and for your company. And so anybody can create a template and have it for yourself. But you as an admin, you can create a template and share it with the company. So that way they can use it. So when you create those templates, everybody can see them and then just add whatever they need to add, and they have their own already. So that's another really cool thing that I used a lot, is using those templates and ability to do that and share it with others. Data is also guided by the principles of NetSuite access. So if you sharing, if you as administrator have access to pretty much everything inside of NetSuite fields, and you share it with somebody who doesn't, they will not be able to see the data. So you don't have to worry about giving them a visibility to something that they don't have it set up to see, which is another cool thing, because a lot of times when you share it with somebody, then they can see, they tell you, hey, I can see the data. That can be, that's probably like a flag that, okay, they probably don't need to see it, or maybe they do, they just need to be adjusted on their roles and permissions so they can see the data that they need to see. So that's a really cool thing as well. So you don't have to worry about giving different reports to somebody who doesn't have to see. NetSuite on the back end will take care of that. Okay, now this is my favorite kind of slide, and this is probably the biggest feature that Workbook offers with this tool, which is a multi-level join. This is one reason why my company got this tool, got this to work with this, right? So this is why we started, because searches, reports, they don't go deeper on the multi-level. So what I mean by that? So multi-level, so think of that as when you open up a record in NetSuite, whatever it could be, a custom record or an item record or a transaction record, you only see what's on that record. And so whenever you want to go to another record, you almost have to kind of like, okay, I'm opening up another tab, right? So I'm going to another record. So if you opened a sales order and you look at the item, now you need to open up an item to see the item fields, right? And so that's kind of like what I mean by, that's kind of what joins and levels mean. So in this example, you can see the transaction record, which is kind of like, can be a sales order, right? And you can see the transaction line, which technically is already a level join, but you can see it, right? You scroll down, you see the transaction lines, and you see different items on that sales order. Now, if you want to see the details of this item one, you will have to right click and then open up in a different tab. And then you go to that record and you see those fields on that item, whatever that is. Now, if that item, if the item has different members, which is kind of like a sub item of that item, now that's another one, right? So now you go and when on this record, you go and click on members, and then you click on each of those, right click, and you see that member record. Now, you will never be able to accomplish this in searches. I mean, there is a way to do that with really deep SQL queries, but it's super difficult and definitely super time consuming to build those queries. Here, it's super easy. You will see when we go to the example. So this lets you go through many levels of joins. And I can tell you that I've been working with so many years, I never came to the point where it got to the limit. I mean, I think I went like as far as like 10 different level joins, and it was handling just fine. Now it gets a little bit confusing. It's kind of, you gotta really keep track on where you dig deeper and you're not looping itself. So So when you go to a transaction record, you can go into the item. In these examples, you can see you can also from transaction record go the other way, right? You can go into the an employee record, right, or a customer record from this particular a transaction. So if you can go to the customer and see on that customer what other items did they ever buy. So you can go to the customer from transaction to the customer, from the customer you can go to other transaction, and then you can go from those transactions to items. So you can kind of split up and have this multi-level in different directions. And that's what the beauty about this. You can start analyzing the data that you never analyzed before and be able to see the trends, right? You can start building your own searches, well, workbooks. I call it sometimes searches as well, because it's kind of like a search, just a little bit different, but workbooks, right? So you can search inside through this workbook of different type of things like you never could do in the regular searches. For instance, you can go and see and say, hey, give me this customer and then give me these items from, you know, whatever the items they buy, the most common item, and then those items categories. So you can really start digging deeper and start building those analyzing data and be able to target, send those customers email based on that and say, hey, buy this item because you bought this, right? So this tool can really get you closer to build your own kind of like an AI kind of tool, so you can analyze the data and ultimately, of course, make more money for your company. So that is probably my biggest kind of cool thing that this workbook offers, is the multi-level joins. And of course, in our example, we will dig deeper and get into it to see how this works. Now, let's talk about, this is actually last slide before we move on to the walkthrough. So I want us to understand how this whole thing works and how this works before we touch the actual NetSuite and see how it works. So basically right here on the left, you can see this kind of big giant data, right? So this is all your NetSuite data that you have. And when you start building workbooks, in this case, workbooks consist of two different types of kind of two different sides or two different data structures, you can kind of say, data set and workbook itself. And what it is the data set is first. So what it does is basically filters your data from NetSuite, from all the data. So you make queries here on this side before you build your data set. So you put your filters kind of like in searches when you do your filter, your criteria. I want only invoices, right? So that's kind of like you building your data that you want to use later on. So unlike searches, you build right away one type, right? So you build your criteria and you build your results right away. Here you have two different types. You have a data set and then you have a workbook later. So you filter, you only dump, you create this kind of a toolbox, and you put your things in there, what you're going to build. So it depends on what you want to build in your workbook, what kind of things you want first, and then you build your data set basically on what needs to be presented. So if you are building a workbook and graphs that you want to see your sales for last month, right, versus let's say last year's month, right? So this January versus last January. So you only want to bring the data set for this particular data times. So you don't need to bring everything. So that's why you kind of see here the data set is much smaller than all your NetSuite data. While when you build in searches inside of NetSuite, you kind of do them right away all together. But in the workbooks, you build this data set first. You filter your data, you put in here what you want to use later in your workbook. And once you're satisfied with your data set, you save it, and then you start building your workbook, extracting the data now from the data set. You don't go back from workbook to the NetSuite data right? You go in and bringing it from the data set, which data set always, sorry about that, which data set always makes it live from the NetSuite itself. So it's still kind of like just a live filter that sits right in there. So hopefully, guys, I explained it to you that you can understand. And of course, now that we're gonna go into examples, you will see what I mean by that, where we're talking about the data set versus the workbook and versus the actual data that's always inside your NetSuite all together. So I think we're ready for to go and get our hands dirty and start looking into how this whole thing works and how we can use it to produce beautiful graphs and charts to analyze our data. Okay, before we get into the actual exercise and go through a live demo, let's just quickly go through and show where things are and where to find certain features and things like that. So when we're gonna start building, you guys will be familiar with where things are. Okay, so in NetSuite, from the home page, right here on top, there is Analytics tab. So when you click on it, it will brings you to settings where you can choose between workbooks and datasets. And so that's your basic navigation for both of them, workbooks and datasets. I kind of wish the datasets was first and then the workbooks was after, because that's kind of logically what I think of. First is dataset. You have to create dataset first before you get to the workbook anyway. And here are the favorites on top, and since I don't have any, I'm just gonna collapse it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick the data set first. And so I know there's one good example here, which is this one, time actual. Now this is a pre-built, this is a template that anybody can use. And as you can see over here, once it loads, you cannot save it, it has to be saved as, so that way you cannot mess up their template. So over here on the left, you will see that it loads right away, and these are the records. This is all your NetSuite data that has in here, and this time tracker is your entry point in this particular case. After that, over here, this is all the records. And when you click on this, over here on the second column, these are all your fields for this particular record. And so the blue ones are the ones that we are using. So these are right here on the right. This is your data. This is what gets put into it. Over here on top, right top, criteria summary. This is what we use to filter. So this is on the left, all the data in NetSuite, and this is we use this criteria to filter what we want to exclude and what we want to include only in the data that we're pulling. And the fields right here, we can drag and drop them into this. Means that we want to display this particular field from this particular record. And you can collapse that if you don't want to. This will give you a great view of the data itself. You can also collapse the criteria so you can see more of the data. You can scroll and scroll down to see all the data rows that you have. So this is the structure of your basic data set that you have. Once you have and you like what you see, you basically save it, and then you create a new workbook from this data set. So now let's go into the data set. So let's go back to the analytics. We're gonna don't want to save as. When we click on the workbook, we can also go into the workbook, which is time actually here. This is also created from that data set that we were just in. And so data set is very similar to this workbook as well in the way it's laid out. Except over here, the data set is the one that you can see. These are all the fields that we were able to pull in. This is all the data that we can use. If we don't have it in here, that means we need to go back to the data set and actually open it up. So over here, you can see the time actual. This is the actual data set that is being used for these fields. So when you click on it, you can actually bring it up and click Open Data Set. And this will bring it up in here. And you can see this is the same data set that we were in there just a minute ago. Now, the workbooks are very similar. Let's click Cancel. So workbooks very similar in the layout. You can collapse this to open up all that. And the data that you see over here, this is same, very similar from the other one. This is just the raw data, all the columns that are displayed. Now, these are the pivot and charts that were already created. We will go through example creating all this. But now I'm going to just show you. So when you click on it, this is just going to open up a pivot tables. And if you open up a chart, it's going to open up a chart. Pretty cool looking. I think this is very interesting. I haven't worked with this one. I think this one is for tracking the time for projects. So it's pretty cool. So this is basically how things are laid out on a workbook and the data set. So you can click Save and Share from here. We will go into details more. Now, when you go on the home page, so this is just kind of overview. When you're on the home page on the dashboard, this is the one of the this is what we're gonna create in a minute. But this is just how to display, and this is the way to bring into your home dashboard one of the workbooks that you create. So that's pretty much it as far as where to find things and the layout. So just basically remembering the Analytics tab and how things are laid out. So I think now we are ready for the actual demo. Okay, so let's get right into it. And we're gonna go through the basic walkthrough of the Workbook Analytics demo. So we're gonna create a very simple but very powerful workbook that is very useful, I could say. It definitely can be used for your own need. And we will be using cases. And if your company uses cases, this will be great, something that you can definitely guys utilize. And if not, it doesn't matter. This can be applied to any other record type. So let's get into it. On the home page, we're gonna go on Analytics and we're gonna click on it. I wish they had a drop down, but they don't, not yet at least. And you're gonna land into Datasets and Workbooks. And I hope you guys got a good understanding of what the difference between them two. And we're gonna dive right into it. So Workbooks are gonna be the first, and then we got the Dataset. So we're gonna create Dataset first. And you guys know what those are. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just click on New Dataset. And here it's gonna prompt you to select a data type and your record, a basically entry point to where you're gonna access a call upon. And this is gonna create your entry point and load preloaded, preset defined fields for that particular record from NetSuite. So we're gonna use cases. So it's called case. So those are different records that have name case in them. So we're gonna just click case. And once you're in, boom, it loads just like that. And so you see right here on the left side, these are your record and this is the case, which is the entry point. Over here in the second column, these are the fields from this case. And on the right, you see the data. It's already there. So these are the preset fields. And if we don't want any fields from this type, we're just gonna drag and remove them. And you can just click on here and click remove column. But in this case, we actually need them all, from what I understand, from what I remember. Actually, I'm not gonna use the company here. So let's just do this, remove column. And this way you can actually clear your data, and this is what you need to use it for. So you only want to select the fields that you want to use, and if you're not going to use them and you're not going to need them, there is no point pulling that. So what this is, and it's basically pulling all of your cases right now, because over here you can see there are filters. There are no filters created. So if you have a lot of cases in your environment, And this is what you're gonna start with. You're probably gonna have a lot of cases here. You see we have 93. So what are we gonna do here now? Is now, since we have all this, we're gonna go ahead and save it. That's what I like to do right away, so we don't have to mess with anything. And we're just gonna call case dataset example. So I don't like naming exactly what they come up with. So that sounds great. And usually I like to put descriptions in here, and I definitely recommend doing that. But in your case, in this case, I'm not gonna worry about that. But I always suggest you guys put in really good notes in here to know what you guys creating for. Always good to keep it going. Okay, now let's click save. And now once it's saved, now this is good. Now we know if something goes wrong, we can always go back. Now what we have here is what we gonna do is, now that we have the data here, we're gonna try to adjust a little bit and see what we can do with it. One thing that is missing in here that I like to add from the case is ID. And what that is right here, I'm gonna just drag and drop in here, and this is gonna give me the ID of the case. And in order to do that, kind of like every time I work with the data record, I like to open the record. So I'm gonna go to lists, I'm gonna go to support, and I'm gonna open cases. And these are the cases that I see. So what I'm gonna go ahead and open up just one of them. This actually gives me to understand what I'm pulling for. This is all the fields that I want and can get in my report. For the most cases, but some of the cases are not available yet, but usually those are the more complicated topics, which we're not gonna cover in this basic exercise. Okay, so now let's go back to it, and we'll pull the ID, which is right here, number 1, right there. So this is where we pull in. So we got everything that I want, except I'm gonna actually close that now. Let's see what else do we need. I like to pull assign to, so these are the cases that are assigned to, and what I'm gonna do is I want to pull a supervisor of this person. So if you guys have open, if you understand the cases, so basically these are the instances or some issues, depends on how your company configures. Cases are issues that your company, either you need a repair or anything damaged or anything that you need to work on, you can create a case for it. And so this is assigned to, which is a worker that will be performing this case or in charge of solving this issue. So I want to see who is their manager or supervisor. And if you go to the case record over here, you can see that this is assigned to, but the supervisor is not on here, the supervisor of this person. So how can I get this supervisor? And we'll see why it's important. But what we're gonna do, this is where the multi-level join comes into handy here. And over here on the left, you can see the cases are base record. And these are all the fields. These are the fields right here that you see available on this record. However, over here on the left underneath it, these are the multi-level joins. And these are the records that are connected within your base record, which is in this case. So assigned to, which we have right here, is not just a record, right? It's not just a field, it's a record actually. So because it's a record, you can dig deeper into the next level. And so when you click on this assigned to, these are all the records, all these fields for this particular record. And if you actually scroll, if you open this up, these are the records that are associated with this record. But we're not gonna get into multi-level, we're just gonna go to the 2-level join. So when you click on this next record that it's connected to, over here on the right, these are all different fields now for this assigned to record, which in this case will be our employee. And for this employee, so in this case, let's say this Cameron, right, that we're looking at, we need to pull his supervisor. And so when I go and scroll down, and this should be alphabetically, so when I see supervisor, I can drag and drop it right in here, right next to assigned to. And let's see if it's yes. So I can see that all of this that are actually assigned to is showing me who this person's supervisor is. And we can click on this, and if I don't like this naming, I can click on that and show, where is that, rename, and I can just say supervisor. Well, I know you guys probably thinking, well, you just renaming the same as original. Well, not really, because right now you can see assigned to, which is the next record, and this is kind of automatic unless you override it. So now when you click OK, you can see that it's renamed to the supervisor. I just like it to keep nice and clean. Now, next thing I want to point out to you is that right here on top we have a criteria where we can filter, which is very, very important. And so this is just raw data, which we'll see all the records are in here. And now what we want to do is we want to filter by something. Let's say in this case, I only want to see cases that are opened or that are in different statuses. So I want to look at the status here, and I will filter by it. So I can just come here and drag and drop right into the filter criteria, and it's going to open up different values that I can choose from. And in this case, I can choose any of, and I can choose all of those, or I can just choose closed and put it in there. But instead of any of, I'm going to choose none of. And now when I click apply, all of a sudden it's going to drop all of them that are closed and only keep the other statuses. Pretty cool, huh? Very nice and easy to drag and drop things. Another very useful thing that you will see here is when you select any fields here, and very interesting, you can sort, you can do many different things here, move to the left, move to the right. Is when you want to organize the order in which you're seeing it. Rename, you can remove it, we already talked about that. And then that's another really cool thing is show location in field list. And when I click on that, what it's gonna do, it's actually gonna show me right here all the fields, so where this field is located. Sometimes when you pull many different fields in here and you kind of get lost, where are they located in my schema here, that's what you do to kind of show it. Over here, and all the blue ones are the ones that you have, and the black ones are the ones that you're not using in your data set. So if you go back to the one that we just renamed the supervisor, and you're gonna click on that and show location, notice how it switches to assigned to, which is a different record. It can be very useful once you pull a lot of different joins in here. Okay, so I think this is good. I kind of like what I have here. I got everything that I think. What I can do here, I can actually pretty cool things. Before you can actually export this to different formats. You can share it right away, and we'll talk about sharing when we go to the workbooks. And you can save, which in this case, I think I'm happy what I'm seeing, and I'm just gonna click save. Now that my data set is saved, I can create a new workbook, and you can come directly from here and you can click on the create new workbook, or you can go back to the original layout and you can select it from there and then link your data set to that workbook. But in this case, you can just click that, which is super fast, and this is gonna create your workbook. Now, this is kind of cool. This is two different things, right? So you guys know. So this is a workbook, and those are the data set. Two different things. So now we are sitting here in the workbook, and the data set is, these are all the fields that are available for you to play around with, to create different scenarios, do what you need to do. At any point you want to go back to your data set, which is right here, you can select here and click open data set. And what it's going to do, it's actually going to overlay it right here on top. So you can see there's a workbook behind you and data set is here, which is pretty cool. You don't have to go back and find it and modify. You can modify, make any changes here, and then click apply to workbook or click save, whichever you want to do in this case. We're just going to click cancel. We'll go back to that. Now, these are all the fields that are available. And what I like to do is I like to create a table. These are 3 different types of things that you can create in workbooks currently in this version. We got table, pivot table, and then we got a chart, which we're gonna work with all of them. But what I like to do, table is very similar what you saw before. But what I like to do is I like to create a table. First thing that I do is I create a table, and over here I create add all fields to the table. So when I click that, what it's gonna do is gonna bring, and it's gonna basically recreate everything that you just had in your data set. And I just like to have it here so that way when I can compare the data, I can kind of see it here, and I don't have to worry about that. And I can just come here and I can double click on it, and I can call raw data, and that's it. That's all I need. I'm not gonna do anything with that. I just like to keep it here. And now at this point, I can save it. And I would save it case workbook, and we're gonna just call example. And that's pretty much it. Again, guys, always put the descriptions in here. So I'm gonna click save. And now it is saved. At this point, I can share, do whatever I want. So now that I'm kind of satisfied, I want to show you guys what we have here. So anytime you can hit refresh over here, and it will show you the new results. It will pull the new data. Now, over here, you can see when it was the last updated. Now, every time you hit refresh here, this will pull the new data and it will refresh this to the new data set. But if you don't do it, it will never pull until I think it's like every hour or so that it does it. Okay, so now let's talk about different types here. So let's create a new, let's do chart. Chart is very simple, so let's create a chart. So we're gonna go ahead and select the chart. And you can rename it right away, but I like to rename it later when I actually know what's in here. So let me see what I have here. So I got the created date. And so think about the chart X and Y axis. And in this case, we can select which kind of chart we want. So these are all available different types that you can create. Area, not a lot of choices, but that's kind of enough. It's been pretty good to me with everything that I've been creating. So, well, gotta work with what they give us, right? So column chart is good. Now, x-axis is what's gonna go across here. So let's say I wanna do this by date. So I wanna see this date. So I'm gonna drag and drop from all my available fields to the x-axis. And now when you click on this, dates are pretty cool because you can select you wanna go by year, quarter, or month. In this case, well, let me just leave it and to show you guys what it's gonna do. If you forget to do it, you will see it. And now, the reason why I brought the IDs also here is because you can count by IDs. And anytime you are doing a chart, measures right here, which is basically what you combining, what you counting, what are you comparing against to, right? So ID is unique. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop in here into my measures. And you can see that it's actually doing counting, how many of those IDs in each individual date is. So when I click it, this should be good. Now when I click refresh, and many of these things will be try and error, and you're like, oh, what is this? Well, these are all your cases because we did not specify what date, and automatically it dropped by the year. So everything is in 2024. So all you see here is all your cases in 1 year. But if you had different years, you will see in each individual year because that's what it's combined by. But in this case, you can select this and you can select the month instead of year. And again, nothing's happening. Don't forget to hit refresh to pull and re-render this. Wow. And look at this beauty. In here you can see which is one is January, and then you got February, March, and so on. And you can see the total of cases created because that's the date of creation. So this is how many dates you, how many cases you created in each month. Now this is kind of cool, but I want to make it cooler and I want to add series. And series is basically how are you splitting further in the different series, right? So we got the date here, and how do we want to split further this data? And what I want to do is I actually want to do it by status. So in this case, what I want to see is in each month that it was created, in which of those are in which statuses. So if I come here and I grab the status and, well, sorry about that, status, and put it right into series, I hit refresh, and boom, just like that, it automatically split it up for me. I can kind of hide this to see better graph. Right here, collapse it. And what it's gonna do is now they split those up into different columns, and you can see that when you highlight over, and you can see, okay, this one was created in February. Remember, the date here is the creation date, and this there are two cases in escalated status, and one of them is reopened. Now, when you come and you can see different ones, and you can also over here kind of deselect it, and if you are leaving last one right here, these are all the cases that are in progress. And if you keep on adding, removing, so now you can see all escalated statuses, and then you can see all the reopened and so on. Well, there's nothing here, so now you can see not started. Very cool and very interesting, right? So this can be very useful data. And at this point, what I'm gonna do is I kind of like what I see. Very cool, very nice, very impressive, right? It took us only a little bit of time, and this can be very useful. I'm gonna rename this, and let me see, I'm gonna just call this case status per month. It's good enough. I can go back, always rename it later. Now, this is really nice. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create another one, which is gonna be a pivot table. We're gonna select a pivot, and pivot is kind of like an Excel sheet if you ever worked with. It's a kind of just using these tables, using this data to build kind of summary or join record, and kind of like X and Y columns and rows, and kind of combines it by that. So very similar to Excel pivots. I think that's why they're called them pivots. So what I want to see in this case, I want to use the assign to. So what I'm gonna do is gonna create here assign to and drop it into my rows. So I kind of visually kind of seeing what I want to see. I want to see the names here, and then I want to see different statuses in columns. That way I can see which person is working on what and how many cases they have in each status. So that's kind of have the visual representation. And you can always, again, move things around and play with it. And if you don't like it, always you can undo. So assign to, then I have status, and I'm gonna drop the status here. And again, measure, I want to do the ID again. I wanna count those. Okay, let's see what I have. Let's see if this is gonna be any useful information here. Boom, look at that. So now I see all the people that these cases are assigned to and their statuses that come across. So now, also very interesting thing that you can do here is in the pivot, you can create the sum of those. And when you click on that, you can do the bottom for the rows, and then set individually. We're gonna do columns on the bottom, and this is gonna be very cool. So click OK. And look what it's gonna do. Besides just doing that, it's also gonna give you the summary of all of that total that you have here. So let me see why I didn't do it the way I wanted. Let's see. Okay. Huh, interesting. Okay, there's gotta be something that's preventing me from creating that one. Actually, never mind. If you click on the set individually for each of them and you click OK, you'll be able to see that I was able to, I forgot to do that. There is a trick to that. So now you can see that you can summarize it on the right as well. So you can see that this person, let me just collapse this. So Nick has 10 cases and he did not start any of them. Okay, what a lazy guy. Anyway, let's look at anybody. So we got, let's look at me right there, Oleg. So I not started 4 and I got 7 escalated, total of 11. And you can see total this way as well. So this is pretty useful, very cool as well. And okay, let's rename this one. And we can call it status per assignee. That's a good name. So this is pretty cool. Now let's do one more. And one more pivot, and that's going to be a little bit different because we're going to do it a little bit differently. So what I want to see is, instead of just being in the row and columns, I kind of want to build a row collapsible. And well, the best way to explain is to show it to you. So what I want to do is very similar way. I want to do assign to first in a row. Then after that, I want to do a status, or let's do priority. Sounds like really cool. Let's do priority. And then we're gonna do the ID. And this is gonna tell us what we want to see in this case. Okay, now let's hit refresh and see what we get. Boom. And just like that. So what you can do here is, it's actually building kind of like collapsible data, and you can expand it. You can also actually collapse it or open all of them over here. And you can do the same thing in here. So you can see right away that this, like for instance, we talked about that on the table, which over here is much easier to see, because in this case, when you're looking at it, you kind of have to like try to figure out how many are reopened or in progress. When you're in this table, you can kind of see a little bit better, because you can see that me, Oleg, had only 2, medium and high. And when you open that up, you can actually see all of those as well. These are the ID of each case. Very cool, very nice. And you can also summarize them over here and kind of see the total of each of them as well. I kind of like this way a lot. It's kind of easier. I don't know, it's kind of cooler to see. I don't know, just very interesting, just different. So whichever you guys prefer is pretty cool. So we're gonna do also just rename this, and we're gonna name this priority per assignee. Very nice. Now, and then I'm going to show you one more thing, which is kind of very interesting and very cool as well. A little bit more complicated, but I'm sure we can handle that. So let's see, what if I want to now see the statuses that are closed, right? If I see it, remember how we are in a data set, we kind of remove that. And we don't have that status here anymore, because remember that if you filter that in the data set itself, you will never see that in the workbook, because everything that you see here is the raw data, which we excluded the statuses. Now, if we want to include that, we're going to go back. Let's say I want to create a chart that shows me all the closed dates or closed statuses. Which I need to do is I need to go back to the data set and simply come here and select this, or I can just come here and I can just trash this filter. And now look at that, it updates all of them. And now I got all of them here, and now I can click apply to workbook. I click save. If you're not sure what you like, if you need to test it, you can go back to workbook. Or you can save right away. In this case, let's just apply to workbook. I'm not sure if I want to save that yet. Now click refresh, because you can see that. So in here, when I click refresh, this will populate now with all of them. Now it's gonna do to all of them. So if you saw the statuses here, now when you click refresh, you will pull the other status here automatically, which is really nice. So you don't have to predefine. You can just change your data set and it automatically will change in here. But if you don't want to see this statuses here unclosed, you can come to the status over here. You can select that and you can still select filter status. So you can further create another filter here. So we're gonna click filter status and we're gonna do same thing we did in the data set. We're gonna click closed and we're gonna do none of. Click apply, hit refresh, and we should see the same chart we did before. So remember, if you have the data in the data set, you can use it here and you can filter out what you don't want. And one thing to remember, you can always ask, well, what if I just want to include always everything? Well, you don't need to, because the more you pull in, the slower it will create you charts for you and so on. So you only want to pull in your data set what you think is going to be needed. You can always go back and add that if you're missing something, just like we did right now. So now what I can do here, actually one thing that I do want to add is, let me quickly go back to the open data set, and I want to also pull date closed. Now that I have closed, I want to also have creation date, and I'm going to have date closed, which is pretty cool. It's very important. If we want to look at the data, now that I'm here, and I have that date closed as well, so I'm going to create a chart, and I'm going to create date closed with a status of closed. So same thing that we had over there, except now I'm going to do date closed on my x-axis, and I'm going to again do month, and then here I'm going to do status, and I'm going to filter this status to only see closed, and I'm gonna hit apply, hit refresh. Oh, I forgot the measures. Well, of course, because your measures are required, because what do I want to do with them? I want to count how many of those are in each month, and now I hit refresh, and boom, just like that, it's telling me all the cases that were closed in each month. Okay, and one thing you can do is you can come here under properties and you can rename your you can name this chart to be cases closed. Okay, you can also have subtitles, but in this case we don't need access. We can just say months closed, and then boom, I can hit refresh. Boom, months closed, and here it comes, just like that. Okay, so, and again, I'm gonna rename this to my what I'm gonna name this, months closed, cases closed. I don't like that, cases closed per month. Okay, perfect. Now, and I think I have some time a little bit to show you guys a really cool thing that I kind of, now you kind of ask me, why did we add that supervisor? Well, this is the cool part, and this is where this is very powerful tool can really give you agile when you talk about creating different reports. And this is gonna be the last thing I'm gonna show it to you in this case. And we're gonna conclude this topic on this short little demo. Well, not very short, but very interesting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back to my data set, and I'm gonna see that what I created here is I have that supervisor, right? That we haven't really used, so why did we even need to? Well, what I want create my report for is actually what I created for my company, is I create this for the managers, for the supervisors, so they can see their subordinates, what are they working on, right? So their employees, what are they working on, only who they are managing. So if I just create this and I share this for all the managers, you know, we don't want to see if we, you know, we don't want to show other people who they're managing or whatever. So in this case, we want to do is a filter by the supervisor. But instead of just creating for Oleg and then name them Oleg, and only for the Oleg, that way you would have to create each individual workbook for each individual supervisor. In this case, which is really cool, that I learned, is what you can do is you can actually filter the supervisor, and not by a particular name, but by me. And what it's gonna do is each person that logs in will only see who are the supervisors. So in this case will be Oleg, which is me. And very cool. So when I click apply, and now you will see so supervisor is Oleg, but all the assignees, so these are kind of like my subordinates that work for me, and I want to see what are they doing. So now what I can do just here is just click, let's say, apply to workbooks, and now I'm here, I'm gonna hit refresh, and now what I'm only gonna see here is only the people that are that I'm supervising. So if I go back to the case status per month, and no, actually, let's see this assignee, right? So this people here. So now when I hit refresh, I will only see the people that I'm supervising without any changes, any filters applying to here, and I don't need to create. So what I can do is it's gonna work for all of them. And so now I can see, as I'm managing people, I can see who they're working on, what are they working on, how many cases they have, and so on, how many they're closed. Very cool and very nice. Once you are done with the workbook and with the data set, and you are happy and satisfied, now you want to share it with the people, with the managers, or whoever is going to be using this or be needing this. So in order to do that, let's navigate back to analytics page. And you can always share the data set, but I recommend sharing the workbook. So unless the people know what they're doing and they can create their own workbooks. This way, you just create a workbook for them and share it with them so they can use it. So in order to do that, let's open it up. You can click on this actions. However, it's not working right now. And I think I noticed from before, it's been a couple of months since this button right here is not working. So hopefully they'll be able to fix this. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on the case that you created, wanted to share. Once you're in that workbook, you cannot share each individual report, at least as of now. So you cannot just do that. You can click just and share this. You have to share the whole workbook, which they will have access to all of the things that you have created here. So to do that, there's a share button right here. Now, if you've been creating it and haven't saved yet, you will not be able to share it. You'll have to save it before you share. So now that we have it, so let's click share. And this is the normal kind of sharing procedures from all the other things that you share in NetSuite. You can do it by role, or you can do by the employee selecting. And so this way you can select just a role for managers or whatever. So that could be useful if you know all of them will be using this. You can just find the role and share it with them. Or you can click on employees. In this case, since it's training account, I only have one active employee here. You can select it and put it on the other side. That means those people will be shared with. Okay, so in this case, I will just not do that. And so actually, let me just do that anyway. So that way I don't have to worry about changing around. Okay, click share. Once you share it with them, I'm not sure if they'll be able to get, I don't believe they'll get notifications, but what they will do is once you tell them or send them an email, call them or whatever, and once they go to analytics homepage, they will be able to click here and find they're under shared with me. So when you click on there we go. So this is shared with me, and since I shared it with myself, I see it here, or I can click on my workbooks and I'll see the same one. So there you go. So they'll be able to find it this way, and then they'll be able to click on it and do whatever they need to do. Now, one thing that they should also do is if they go to the home page, and on here they go to the personalize, what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna put there under dashboard. And so to do that, if you find this analytics portlet here, specific dashboard, and then you can do up to 10 of them. And so what you just do, you just drag and drop in the location that you want to have it. And once you're there, you can close this, and then you can click on setup. Once you click on setup, you will see over here that you can select which type you want to put in here. And so let's say, it doesn't really matter, but you can select charts or you can select the pivot tables. But here you can select, you can see the names. So those are the names that we created in them. And so now you can see that you can select it. Let's just do this one. And once you select it, there are different options. You can open them in the workbook to see before you do that, just to make sure that you do that one. And once you're satisfied, you can give a specific name that you want. So you will overwrite this name if they don't like it. They can always do that. Short, medium, tall, how much space you have. And that's it. And you can just click save. And now you will see this portlet show up right here. Okay, that's very cool. So now it's kind of big for me. I don't like it that way, but they can do whatever they want with them. So here they actually can filter it right from here and remove the filter. So if they remove all, and you will be able to see all the statuses in this case. Okay, you can also do is they'll be able to change the chart type that you have. So they can click on this column chart and display data if they like in a different way. They also can do remove the closed ones. If they don't want to see closed, they can just click on that. For some reason, I don't like that chart type. I like my column chart better, just being used to it. So you can deselect the closed and you see all the other ones, and you can just keep deselecting. So you can do whatever you want, just kind of like you do in there. It's pretty cool, very useful. I've created many of those, and so very interesting what you can do with them. And you can have up to 10 of them. So you can have another one underneath here, and you can rearrange. You guys know that you can change the layout here and put them over there as well. So pretty cool. Let's talk about some tips and tricks that I found to be very useful working with workbooks and data sets. So let's go to Analytics homepage, and when you get here, so you will get to see workbook and data sets. When you're searching for one or the other, you can use this search bar to use your keywords wherever that you know your names, and you can also filter by different types that you have. Another cool thing you can do is we can click on this details. When you click on it, you will see everything about it. You can see the fields used, the criteria used, different level joins that you see here. So that's very useful when you're just looking for one, to make sure you're opening the correct one. You can open it from here. One thing that you can also do from here, and it's actually the only way to do it, is if you're in the workbook or data set, this is how you delete them from this view. So on the actions here, you cannot click on it. Again, this is a NetSuite issue, and I'm sure they're working on it, because right now you can't delete them from this window. And if you are in the workbook, and if you can click on here, there is no way for you to delete from this view. So you have to kind of go back here. However, there is a trick. If this issue still is the same, you can click on different view type over here, and it will bring you kind of like tiles view instead of the list view. And here you can click on that, and this is where you can delete it. So I kind of found this to be working. So I'm not sure what is going on with them, but I'm sure they'll fix it eventually. Notice that a lot of them you cannot delete, and those are because these are the templates coming in from NetSuite. Okay, so I still like to be listed view because you can kind of better see them more. Actually, you can see them more in the view. Make them favorites, so when you click on one, it will show up in your favorites over here, so use that as well. So I like to use them because sometimes when I'm working on them and I know that I still need to finish them up, that's how I have my favorites here, and then when I'm done working on them, I can just kind of defavorite them. Okay, now let's get into Dataset. And another cool thing that you can do here is always, it's a good way of doing it is to give good names and descriptions. Remember that. Here's the name. You can click on edit. You can click on edit of the description, and then also the ID. Right now it's just giving you the 8, which is a bad practice. This is automatically given from NetSuite, kind of like internal ID of that, but you should always rename it, and they give you a suggestion here, and use your company name and the object, cases and name, and kind of briefly as well utilize that as well, so that way you can easily access, especially when you start working with scripting, you will need to use this ID. So when you get to here and you will be working with different multi-joins, remember to always, it's a good practice to rename the fields here. So you can click on that and click rename, and this will give you a good description. So if you just have, for instance, an ID here, you would like to say something, is there internal ID, is there a customer ID? Once you have multiple IDs in one report, that's very useful to rename that. What you can do here, as a good thing to know, is export button, and you can export this as CSV, and this data can be utilized inside of Excel, whatever you want to do with that, or save it for later. So this is a good thing to do. And also when you are in a workbook, you can also do the same thing here with this button. You can always export this to CSV, and once you're working with charts, what you can do is you can print, or you can also export this image to SVG file, which then you can use in your presentations or wherever you want. And also you can do the same thing with exporting the pivot tables into CSV and then analyze the data inside of Excel sheet. Okay, or just store the data for later use, because this data, remember, will be changed live. So if you want to save specific dates or anything, you can always do that. Also, what you can do is remember to always filter your data set. So that way, if you do not need that, so for instance, if I don't need, like we covered this before, if you don't need closed, there is no point of bringing that to your workbook if you're not going to use it. So just right now in this case, when you only have so many little results, that doesn't matter. But once you have your once we go into more deeper examples on different record types and sales orders and invoice, and your company has a lot of them, literally millions, you want to limit. So you can always filter that to date, or filter for certain customers or the items, whatever you want. So remember to filter this before you create the workbook, so that your workbook only has the rows that you need. Also remove the fields that you do not need, so that way when you come to workbooks, you only need to use what you have here. If you don't need it, don't bring it over, and you can always go back if you need something quickly. Add that. And another good thing, remember to practice, is always put your once it's done, add that to your dashboard, And to do so, you just click personalize and add the analytics portlet, and then add that particular graph or pivot table to your dashboard, so that you can quickly access, and you can have up to 10 of them on your dashboard. Now remember also is that this is gonna drive you slow performance a little bit. So if you have a lot of data pulling in and you have 10 of them on your dashboard, when you first enter it, it will kind of take you a while to load those, as you already know. So that's pretty much it on tips and tricks. Hope this helps you guys. Okay, let's talk about some of the issues that you may come across during the time you work with workbooks. Some of the errors, some of the issues they might see, or very confusing parts and things like that. So let's go over some of them. There's definitely way more than that, but I just picked a few to kind of just get started on this. So one thing that you will notice when you are in the workbook, when you create data set, this data, as you dropping in fields and you're working with different records, this is live data as it updates. When you are in a workbook, you will see the date here that it's pulled. So last time that it's actually used the data. So as new orders coming in and you're working on this, this is what's gonna tell you exactly which time it came in, the data. When you hit the refresh, that's when it actually goes back into the database and grabs it and updates your data rows, okay, or fields. So this is to watch out. This, if you don't do it, I think it's an hour, maybe 90 minutes, that it automatically. So if you come back, you save it and come back, it will automatically reload. So when you're on the dashboard, when you're working on your homepage, same thing goes here. You have to hit refresh, otherwise it will only refresh after an hour or so. So that's very important. A lot of times you will not see that new data that's coming in, okay? Another thing that you can come across some issues is when you're trying to find a field that you know exists, but you can't get to it. So for instance, if you're working with transaction types, you know there is a main line, there's item line, text line, and so forth, and you know that it's in there. So if I come here, you can use this search to look for the field, main line, but if I'm typing in, it doesn't exist in there. And the reason why it's, well, you can think that maybe you spelled it wrong or whatever, it's not there. But if you know for sure it's there and it's not showing up in records or fields, that means it's not loaded yet. So what I mean by that is that when you are opening up your data set and you start creating, it only loads. So this is our entry point, entry record, and then these are all the records that are connected to it. So whatever is the case, if you open the case, you will be able to get to this records, and then from these records you can have the access to the fields. So assign to, and we got to the supervisor. Same thing for others. So automatically it loads, I think it loads like about 2 or 3 directly, and then if it goes farther than that, it doesn't preload. You need to load manually or find it to get there. So what I mean by that, so again, if you type main line, and it's not there, you can go to the bottom over here and it says show more results. That means it's gonna go and deeper, farther, extended. That means that what you're looking for is not in immediate level to that. You need to load more. And so you can click on that. I'm not gonna do that before. I'm gonna show you. So if I click on assign to, I know when I open up this assign to record, which is an employee record, I know that I can grab the transactions out of it. And so when I scroll down to transactions and I open the transactions, and now transactions will have the transaction line. And then once you open that up, and now you should see the main line here loaded right there. So now if I type it in, main line, you can see that it's automatically loaded by you going there. Or if you click on show more results, which I'm gonna do right now, this is gonna load a lot of records that are connected. And once you're in there, you can type main line and you will see how many main lines you have, because all of these transactions that are opened up. Okay, and these are just so these are the fields and records, and of course mainline is not a record, so you will not see that there, but it's only fields that are tied to this particular record. So just be careful if you're looking for something, you might want not to load everything to get somewhere that you want to. Another thing that I want to talk about is unavailable fields. So when you are in the data set and you creating different fields here, remember how you click save and then in the workbook, this is what's available here. Now, if I go into dataset and let's say I know for sure that right now in our workbook that we created, I'm using this assign to, and I remove this column here and I click save. Once I click save, I go back to the workbook and let's say I hit refresh. You will see what happened. You will see this error come up, and what it means is that the data in this workbook contains field data that you do not have access to. So it's not really an access issue, it's just you don't have that field anymore. And you will see that once you click OK, you will see that assign to just does not exist here, and that's because again the data set that filters your data is removed here now, so you do not have it. To fix that, you just come back here and add that field back into it. So I can just click undo in this case and then click save, and then it will do the now. The same thing will happen with the access. So when you give access when you share this workbook or data set with anybody in your company, and they get this, and then they open it up and they see the same issue like you just saw with the warning, that means they do not have access based on their role. So one thing, the cool thing about that workbook does analytics is that it protects the data from sharing with somebody who doesn't have access under role permissions. So it's horrible that they're gonna get it and they're gonna say, hey, I can't see this data. Well, that means they don't have the permission set to see the data. So if it's a sales, if it's a credit card information or anything that they do not supposed to see based on their role, they will not see it here. So they'll just get that as well, and they'll let you know that they can't see that. So you can either adjust their role, or you can just reply to them saying, hey, you don't have access to this, sorry. Or you can just remove that field, that column from those results for them, so they don't get to see that error all the time. Okay, everyone, we have reached the end of this introductory course to workbooks, SuiteAnalytics in NetSuite, and I hope I guys really explained to you well and you understand how this works and how this tool is actually very powerful and what it has to offer. I hope you guys can find use for your day-to-day jobs and make your job easier for you or for those in your company. And hopefully that you can understand what are the tools and what it has to offer for you to be able to actually take advantages of that. Know the advantages of other tools. So if you compare into the searches and reports, make sure you know the advantages, what workbooks cannot do, limitations as well, some of the fields that you cannot use. It's not here to replace any of the other tools. It's just another tool. I find it to be very useful, very easy to create. Probably a lot of people just go back to searches right away. But once you start using the workbooks first time, second time, third time, and that's why you just have to keep on practicing. Figure out the best way of how you like it. You will find a lot of times you will create your own templates for different records, for the customers, for users. So that way you can actually start, when you start coming back to it, it will be much easier for you and faster to create new reports. I did not cover many of the different topics that are much more complicated, as far as getting into formatting, doing different formulas and formatting the data in the certain way that you like, working with data and ranges for dates, going much deeper into different multi-levels. So hopefully I will get to work on this soon for you guys, that you can dig deeper into much more advanced topics in the workbook. So I hope you guys liked it, and I hope you found this very beneficial and not confusing. Please leave a comment and let me know if you guys want me to continue and do the advanced one as well. And thank you very much for watching this. Hope you like and subscribe. Thank you, and until next time.